Welcome to the Gamigo Cosplay contest. My name is Lou, and the final month has arrived. 4 more weeks of super speed crafting lie ahead before the last day of submission will put an end to this journey. So if you're interested in joining the fun, click that link in the video description and get to going. If you're already participating, then what the hell are you doing here wasting your precious crafting time? And for everyone else, let's wrap up the introduction because time is something I no longer have. For all those who do not know, this is the 110-115 Sharpshooter armor from Fiesta Online, and it is the armor I've chosen to craft for the contest. This is my 4th week on this project, and in this video, I'll be showing you how I upgraded from this to this. My week began full of hope. Hope that I might finally finish my first part of this project, with the least cosplay of all items, the necklace. My starting point was promising, and I was full of ideas, so I did more experimenting, lots of creating, and just as much destroying until finally, after all too many hours, I got the brilliant idea to string the beads of the wings just like I had the beads of the center. Revolutionary. After this proof of my massive intellect, I quickly ended up with 3 designs of which I have not yet been able to choose a favorite, but I already attached a clasp because you can't prance around an apartment wearing a necklace that doesn't have a clasp. After wasting some time being filthily proud of my half-finished creation, I decided to put in a little more work in the upper arm braces, or more specifically the attachments of the flying shoulder pads. This is as far as my experiments had gotten me so far, with the help of a lot of tape. There were, however, 3 bigger problems I had to address. First, the shoulder pads were not yet detachable, and for transport as well as practicality reasons, that was a must-have. The bar, for lack of a better word, that holds up my shoulder pads I'd already built a few weeks prior by sandwiching 5mm EVA foam between a sturdy cardboard I'd found lying around. Both materials alone would have never done the trick, the foam being too flimsy and the cardboard too susceptible to breakage, but layer them together and they become sturdy enough for the job. After all, the shoulder pads plus bird only weigh a total of 18 grams. As you can see, the cardboard layers have A, different lengths, and B, the EVA foam sticks out at the end. I'll be completely honest with you, that was pure chance, because I didn't measure when I cut all this together. But sometimes you get lucky, and this time I did. Because this build allows the bar to mold itself perfectly to the shape of the arm bracer. Now, to make everything detachable, I decided once again to opt for the magical Velcro tape, which I glued onto both sides of my bar. As it turns out, I wouldn't have needed the Velcro on the outer side because the 7cm of Velcro on the inside are completely sufficient to lock the bar securely into place. But I've decided not to rip off the redundant Velcro because it lends more stability to the EVA foam, so it won't break after detaching the bar a few times. Then, to give the bar more stability, I used some EVA foam to build an open sheath for the bar. Next, I built a full sheath from EVA foam to glue onto the shoulder pads, so I could attach the shoulders from the bar as well, nice and simple. Because obviously, I'd have to hide the bar with loads of feathers, which would make a detachment on the fly quite complicated. And now that I'm writing this, I wonder if I even need to detach the bar from the bracers. Or if I could hide them in such a fashion that they won't be visible if I wear the cosplay without the shoulder pads. But before I can turn to the problem of visibility, let's address another one of the 3 big issues: stability. The upper arm bracers are made of 5mm EVA foam, which is not the sturdiest of materials, and the 18 grams of the 2 shoulder pads, together with the bird, made the braces droop to the side when it was my arm and not fat Elvis wearing them. So obviously, I'd have to build up some more layers. I wondered if I could use rippled cardboard, as it bends in one direction but not the other. Taking care to leave some space at the top for gluing in the feathers, I tried it out, but the cardboard didn't give sufficient stability, so I tried adding another layer of 5mm EVA foam. That already made the situation bearable, but it wasn't what I'd call perfect. And layering both cardboard and foam together wasn't much better either. What I'd truly need is a material that I can bend into shape, but which, after bending, becomes unbendable. Pretty much the definition of Warbler. So, for all the cosplay newbies, Warbler is a thermoplastic material, used in cosplay, and it's very popular, or it was around 10 years ago when doing cosplay out of foam had not yet been invented. Because the biggest problem with Warbler is the price. It's about 5 to 6 times more expensive than EVA foam. But I'm a bit of a perfectionist, and because the stability was not yet to my liking, I decided to order a small sheet of Warbler to test it. It might also come in handy to recreate the metal details on the gloves, since those will probably be difficult to do with foam. After putting up another order at the cosplay shop, I also got myself a new primer and some flexible paint for the feathers. It was time to deal with the optics, the third big problem, because all the attachments have to be well hidden at the end. Now, I'm not very good at project management, but this time that turned out to be to my benefit. Because before starting with the feathers and the bracers, I, having gotten quite sick of them, decided to do something else instead. The feathers of the headpiece. I started by cutting out some paper dummies and taping them to my headpiece until I was satisfied, before taking all my 2mm VA scraps and cutting out the real deal. I taped them again, wasn't happy, slimmed them down, was happy, numbered them and repeated the process for the second layer. When I ran out of scraps, I simply made some more because I still had to cut out my second wrist bracer. Finally, I ended up with a lot of new feathers to take to my dad's garage. Now, this whole paper dummy process turned out quite annoying, so for the arm bracer I simplified things and my work on the stability also came in handy. I stuck a piece of paper between the wall of the bracer and the stabilizing inner layer of 5mm EVA foam, which I hadn't yet glued down because I was still waiting for my warbler. I used some pens, some color, a pair of scissors, and voila! After this step, clever as I was, I went to my photocopier and, whoops. But as an archer who has faced the might of the great King Albireo daily, a broken photocopier was no match for me, and 2 minutes later I found a way to bypass the issue. I stuck my photocopied image into my bracer, and then put it on a few times to cut away enough feathers to give my arm some space to move. After that, I hit the attachment bar with more dummies of paper feathers, and when done, took a good look at my results. It wasn't quite like the original, but I had to adjust the design a little because my feathers would have to hide the shoulder attachments. Next, I marked the lengths of the feathers and got out my 2mm VA foam. While cutting out the feathers, I decided to deviate again from the original armor. The graphics of Fiesta Online are so simple that the outside of an armor is also the inside of an armor. So for a perfect recreation, I'd need one layer of overlapping red feathers sandwiched between 2 layers of overlapping yellow feathers. But what works in a game where 3-dimensionality is optional doesn't work with 2mm EVA foam. The bulk of the feathers would be too big, so I decided to skip the inside layer of yellow feathers. A good thing too, because later that day, after doing more work on the boot details, this was all the 2mm EVA foam I had left. Oh, and also one big box of small scraps. I do hope I won't be needing any more big feathers for my skirt. So, let's talk about the boots. Because there were still details missing, and the last time I had made a teensy mistake. The top is supposed to have the same bird face design as the wrists. As such, I used my newly cut out wrist bracers to help me with my paper templates, and then I had to experiment a little. The original designs require 3 layers of the boot, but I had intentionally only created 2 when I'd made them, out of the simple reason of saving foam. Good choice considering how much all the feathers used up in the end. But because of that, I had to do some design work myself. Finally, I was satisfied and cut out the extra details, and the last step that was left to do was to correct the top of my boot covers. I also went shopping this week, and came back with a lot of stuff I was still needing. One of them was the fabric, and I test-stitched one glove. Because the fabric is a one-way stretch, all I had to do was trace my hand onto a paper and use that to trace it onto the fabric with tailor's chalk in such a way that the direction of the stretch would go around my arms and fingers. Then I placed a second piece of fabric underneath and simply stitched along the line, taking care to add a millimeter here and there to my chalk outline depending on how thick the part was I was working on at the moment. The fingers obviously needing less than the arm. I simply love the result. The color and the fit is perfect, and now I want a fairy godmother to say bibbidi bobbidi boo and recreate the top because I still don't have a working template for that. And here we are again, at the end of another week. I feel like I didn't get a lot done, or at least not as much as I should have. There are still 4 weeks left, but it feels more like I should use the words only 4 weeks left. There's like a small anime-style version of myself running around in circles inside of me screaming help all the time. Anyways, if you're a cosplayer, I hope you saw something that might help you at some point in your projects. And if you've never done cosplay, then what are you waiting for?